Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to the channel, and today, for one of the first videos, well, it's not really the first, but it's one of the first videos, I'm going to talk about Gen 8. And what am I going to do about Gen 8? I am basically going to discuss what I think Game Freak has done, and whether I like it or not. Now, this is a very hot topic. Like, a lot of people have strong opinions on Gen 8, and I'm not any different from them. I have very strong opinions on Gen 8, but I would like to discuss a couple of things in particular. Now, you'll notice that this video says that I feel strongly about, and it doesn't say things I like or dislike. That is because I don't want to make a video about liking or disliking things. I want to talk about a couple of things and how I feel about them in a more objective context. Now, of course, with some of these things, you'll notice some of the entries are things that I personally feel very strongly about, either because I really like or really dislike them. And obviously, those things are going to be pretty biased, because that's just how I happen to feel about the topic. But as far as possible, I will try to remain a little bit objective about the subject. Now, for our first thing that I actually want to discuss, it's going to be Dynamaxing. And I think that's pretty obvious. Dynamaxing is the hot topic of Gen 8. Everyone wants to talk about Dynamaxing, and I'm no different. Dynamax is, for all intents and purposes, a very centralizing mechanic, and in the games this is actually fine. I love Dynamaxing in the video game, mainly because in the video game Dynamaxing is actually fun to use. You can use Dynamaxing at random at any moment you want after you've caught that Pokemon in a raid battle, and it has this really good feel to it. It's like you actually feel like you deserve to use that Pokemon's Dynamax. But if you go to like an online simulator like say Pokemon Showdown, or you go on cartridge and you're going to live battles, you'll find that Dynamaxing is very centralizing to the game. The game can no longer be played the way it used to be played. You can no longer rely on your team being good enough and checking what the opponent has, because most of the time your opponent will Dynamax at a random moment, and you'll be stuck there thinking, oh, well, what was I supposed to do about that? And there are a couple tiers, especially in Pokemon Showdown then, there's a couple tiers that suffer from this more than others, simply by the amount of Pokemon that's in them or what's in them. And I think a very notable example of this would be that the Little Cup tier suffers very greatly from Dynamaxing being present in it because of the native level 5 that you'll find in the tier. Pokemon are level 5 in Little Cup, and obviously if you let a level 5 Pokemon Dynamax, it's going to be insane. But if you go to look at a different tier, say not fully evolved, that tier actually has a lot less issues with Dynamaxing, even though that's still controversial. So Dynamaxing, it's a very controversial mechanic. I do like the fact that they added something like this to keep the gen feel different from the other generations. Although maybe Game Freak has to realize that we want things in-game and not necessarily in live battles. I feel like Dynamaxing could have been left out of live battles and it would have been fine. Nobody would have cared because it would have been a great mechanic in the games. But by adding it into live battles, you put it into the competitive scene, and that's where things start going wrong for Dynamaxing, because Dynamaxing is clearly not a good fit for the competitive scene that we already had in Pokemon. So that's how I feel about Dynamaxing. Obviously, I love max moves, I love what they do for certain Pokemon. Take Cortana in National Dex formats. Cortana Dynamaxing is insane. Xerneas Dynamaxing, insane. But I'll make another video on those topics later. For now, the point is, Dynamaxing, it's a fun mechanic, but it's inherently a little bit broken, and I don't think there's a lot of metas that can actually handle this mechanic without just banning it, or banning a lot of Pokemon to support it. The next topic I want to talk about, Dexit. Now, I'm not going to talk about Dexit quite yet. I'm first going to talk about specifically the ability Regenerator in the new games. Now, I'm a huge fan of Regenerator. Anyone that knows me on Showdown knows that I absolutely love Regenerator. And going into Generation 8 was kind of tough for me. I really disliked the games, I really disliked Dexit, because I was looking at the list of Pokemon that were cut from the games, and I saw a list of Pokemon that I did not like. I saw my Tangela being taken from me, Slowbro being taken from me, Alomomola, gone, Mienshao, gone, Ho-Oh, gone, Corsola. Well, more about Corsola later. But Corsola itself, you know, it's Corsola. But the point here is, Tornadius Therian, gone. A lot of Regenerator Pokemon are actually gone, and instead we got Eldegoss and Gossifleur. Two Pokemon which on paper look like they're halfway decent, but are completely trash because they don't have access to U-turn, the one move that a Regenerator Pokemon that doesn't have the best bulk really appreciates. Instead, Eldegoss and Gossifleur are left with a mediocre move pool that doesn't really allow them to do what they want to do, mediocre bulk, which doesn't allow them to rapid spin at will or set leech seed in and swap out. In general, they're pretty mediocre Pokemon. And when you compare that to something like Tangela or Tangrowth, which had been in the tier up till then, same with Amoonguss, Slowbro, Alamomola, all these Pokemon that had very, very, very good bulk and have an amazing ability in Regenerator, they're gone, and the Regenerator ability as a whole is now basically Toxapex, Eldegoss, and Reuniclus. But due to Eldegoss being pretty damn bad, it's basically just resting on Marini and Toxapex, because even Reuniclus tends to prefer Magic Guard over that Regenerator ability. So even there, it doesn't really have its niche anymore. So yeah, that's just a personal note. I really miss Regenerator. I love that ability so much. Next up, we're going to talk about something else, namely Dexit in its entirety. Dexit, the way it was announced wasn't pretty, and a lot of people really spoke out against Dexit being a thing, but having played a lot of games by now in the Gen 8 formats, I have to say, I love Dexit. I am actually in love with it. Now let me be clear. I'm going to split this into two parts. Part 1, am I happy with the way that the Pokemon Company actually handled themselves here? No, I'm not. When we found out that Dexit was going to be a thing, most players did not know about it, and it certainly wasn't told to us by the Pokemon Company in the first instance. We actually found out in an interview that they were not all going to be in, but we had no idea how many Pokemon we were talking about. Were we talking about 30 Pokemon? All the legendaries? 50? 100? 200? Turns out we were talking about roughly 400 Pokemon. That's a lot, and a lot of players really minded this. And I'm gonna be honest. Initially, I was really against this. I thought, hey, this is very stupid, don't do this. But, I will admit, I gave the games a try, simply because I refused to bash something that I haven't tried, and when playing the games, they did feel like the Pokemon that were actually in the game actually had a decent location for where they were. Everything about it really felt like these 400 Pokemon, the limit on the amount of Pokemon they put in, actually made it feel a lot better competitively and in-game. And it did, I'll admit that it did stress the importance of the new Pokemon a little bit more than a National Dex format would have. Because if you think about it logically, if you want to introduce a Pokemon like Eldegoss, which is basically a glorified Tangrowth, then you have to take out Tangrowth first, otherwise Tangrowth is going to be better, and people are just going to run Tangrowth or Amoonguss. They don't want to run Eldegoss, and I still don't, but Eldegoss was introduced this way, and that kind of made it necessary to remove Tangela first, otherwise there wouldn't be no point in introducing Eldegoss. Even though there still is no point because it's a useless Pokemon. But in that sense, I think that Dexit is a good thing. It has definitely balanced out some of the tiers into a more fresh approach, and being able to play Gen 8 OU without having to deal with Landorus is definitely a blessing, and every tier kind of has its little niche like that, where you're just like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? But you actually have to go ahead and build a new team. You can't just keep playing the same meta we've been playing for 2 years now, where one Pokemon actually dominates the entire tier. Of course, while it's all very happy that they cut a lot of Pokemons, it does have its backdraws. For example, in OU now, you notice that Dynamax Excadrill is absolutely insane, and that is a direct result of some of these Pokemon being cut. So I feel like there hasn't been put enough thought into what Pokemon should we cut, and will that have extensive effects on the competitive scene. I feel like they just cut Pokemon based on a couple of criteria, and they didn't actually consider what that would do to the competitive scene beyond the direct impact that Pokemon had. For example, Landorus has a direct impact that it has Intimidate, and it is one of the best Pokemon in the meta. So Landorus natively causes a situation where ground-type Pokemon that rely on a ground-type move and then another stab physical move, Landorus automatically checks those because it can come in on the Earthquake, it lowers their attack, so then when they try to hit you with the Iron Head, in Excadrill's case, it'll do less damage, and then Landorus still gets to kill them, particularly Excadrill again, because it has its own Earthquake. So, I feel like maybe the balancing and the deeper thought there is lacking, but again, I kinda like Dexit. I really don't mind it as a thing as much as I thought I would. I just miss my Tangela. Moving on to the next thing, what I really like about Sword and Shield, and it's something that is very petty, but I actually really like it, that is the inclusion of technical records. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, But basically, my point here is, what I like about it is that it adds a little bit of that nostalgia when you were using technical machines back in the day and they were used after one use. Call it dumb, I like that little throwback to those mechanics in those days. I'm kinda glad they're in the game, there's not much to say about it, I don't think they're amazing or whatever, but I do like the throwback, and that's all I'm gonna say about them. The next thing I'm actually going to go on about is gym leaders. Now, gym leaders in Gen 8 are definitely interesting. Not only do they look a lot more special than they did in previous generations, in my opinion, there's also the fact that you face a different gym leader depending on what game you're playing. Not that that's something unique to Sword and Shield, but it's definitely a nice little touch that the game's added to create a little bit more diversity between the two versions. Something which, honestly, I've been asking for ever since Black and White. Ever since that first time that you were in a gym and you were like, hey, you're not the same gym leader. Now, of course, even before Black and White, this was a thing back in, I believe, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, where depending between which version you were playing, namely Ruby or Sapphire or Emerald, you'd have a different gym leader too, but I'm kind of excluding that because third versions have always been this kind of different game rather than just another version, so I don't think it's fair to compare these to that. That being said, I don't have much to say about the gym leaders as I haven't finished Sword and Shield yet, so I'll just be continuing on to my next point. The new Galarian forms of certain Pokemon. Now, Galarian forms, much like Alolan forms, were received pretty well by the majority of the community. And initially, people were afraid, like, are these going to be all Cantonian Pokemon again? And I'm very glad to say that no, they're not. And I think Game Freak really did a good job on choosing what Pokemon to give a Galarian form this time. For example, they gave Coughing and Wheezing, well, not Coughing, but they gave Wheezing one, when Muk already had one in the Alolan games. And I'm very happy with that, because Wheezing is a Pokemon that I really like, and seeing Muk get one and not Wheezing, I was kind of like, well, that's dumb. And then they actually went up and fixed it, giving that amazing Fairy Poison typing, a typing that I really love, even if it's not the most amazing in the game. They gave it that, and now it's just a kind of clunky, fun Pokemon to play around with. Now the same goes for the two Pokemon that I actually chose to put on the screen. Now the first Pokemon is obviously going to be Galarian Darmanitan with its nice little icy afro. I really like Darmanitan Galarian, and its new ability in Guerrilla Warfare is amazing. And I feel like Darmanitan, I had been saying that that Darmanitan needed an ice type Galarian form from way before the games were even announced. Like before we knew that it would actually get one. I had been saying that and given an ice type Flare Blitz. Now it didn't get that ice type Flare Blitz, but Guerrilla Warfare basically does that. So I am really happy to see that they actually did include an ice type Darmanitan, and I am so stoked to play around with this thing every single time I find it in my game. I also have one on my party right now, and it is an absolute blast to play around with. Now, in the top left corner, we have the Corsola Galarian Corsola, and I will admit, I was contemplating, do I want to add Corsola, do I not want to add Corsola? I really hate Corsola. So the evolution, I really hate it, I don't like it, I think it's completely deviating from what Corsola is supposed to be, but I get that a lot of people like it. But then we have Galarian Corsola, one of the few Little Cup Pokemon that can actually participate in a very high level metagame. Corsola can easily find a spot for itself in Ubers or in OU because of its insane bulk of 60, 100, 100 with Eviolite. And that alone makes me love Corsola because, as most people know, I'm more oriented towards stall play. But Corsola also has amazing techs in its move pool that allow for you to actually run a very varied amount of sets. It can run Stealth Rock, it can run Curse, it can run Hex, it can run Nightshade, it can run Haze, Strength Sap, Will-O-Wisp. It has a lot of moves that it can do a lot with, and a lot of them are very nice surprise factors when you're not properly prepared to deal with Corsola. So the inclusion of Corsola is definitely something that I really like here, although I would have loved it more if it had Regenerator, which might have been obvious by now. Another thing I really like about these Galarian forms is that they are a lot more pronounced than Alolan forms were, in my opinion. You have the Darmanitan Galarian that is like very expressively ice type. You have the Corsola, which is clearly a coral reef that has died, calling some attention to climate change. I think I really like the fact that they went ahead and did that. You have the Wheezing, which is obviously a product of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, and it's like this huge Pokemon with steam stacks on top of its head. It's a really cool design in general, and you have a lot of these Galarian Pokemon that actually call attention towards these little factors, and I personally think I really like that. I think it's a really good way to call attention to certain things, or to just make a funky design. So I think Game Freak really hit the nail on the head with these forms. I really like them. The graphics of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, I know what you're thinking. I put the meme up here. I know everyone has been talking about this tree for so long, and all the other trees in the game, basically. And yeah, the graphics in Sword and Shield aren't the best. I will admit that. I personally think the game could have looked a lot better. It's possible, it could have looked a lot better. But, and here's my main thing with Sword and Shield, I don't want it to look better. Yeah, it would have been nice if the game had been looking better and played exactly the same. That would have been great, and I know it's possible. So do I excuse Game Freak for not doing it? No, I don't. Like, they could have made it look better. Everyone knows this. But it's not a reason to hate the game, because to me, the game, as it came out, and the way that I can play it, feels like a very solid game. It's a game that I can pick up, I can take my Nintendo Switch, I can go sit on the train when I have a train ride of an hour, and I can play the game as if I was still holding that Game Boy from so many years ago, trying to enjoy a little portable game. And that's what I personally want from a Pokemon game. I don't want it to be a big console game, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way. Pokemon isn't a big console game. Pokemon is a portable game that you can take with you on the go and you can enjoy it. And to me, the way the game actually came out really captures that nostalgia for me and leaves me in that mood. And now you can like the graphics or you can dislike them, that's totally fine. Everyone has their own opinion on graphics, especially on graphics, because graphics are natively something very controversial. But I personally really don't mind the graphics as they are in the game right now, and I really don't think it's something to be angry about. I think Game Freak didn't do that badly a job. On the other hand, Pokemon just popping into the field is kind of inexcusable, but, you know, I'm not gonna dedicate too much time to that. And then another thing is the competitive scene. Now, it's obvious that Game Freak tried their best to do something about the competitive scene in this game, but as I said before, I feel like they didn't do enough for it. Now, there are definitely a couple things, and this part really just ties in with a lot of parts I've already mentioned by now, but this kind of just captures what I think is a big thing about the new games. Primal Groudon being gone, for example, from the Uber scene is humongous. Primal Groudon has dominated the games for so long, along with Xerneas ever since it came out, Primal Kyogre, Mega Rayquaza. These Pokemon have been so prevalent in the games for so long now, and the fact that they're just gone is actually really relaxing. Landorus, Therian, Chansey, just to name two other Pokemon, they are so relevant in the games, and now they're just gone for a while, and you can just really enjoy the games without being always looking at them, as we have been ever since they came out. And I personally think I really like that. Another big factor, of course, is the exclusion of Return and Hidden Power and Pursuit in the new games. Pursuit alone would have been a big thing, because a lot of dark types, and I'm thinking of Crocodile, Pawniard, really rely on that Pursuit to trap that Ghost type, trap that Psychic type in, and quickly kill them. But now that move is just gone, and I really like it, because I hated that move. Now that is of course a personal opinion, so whether or not you like Pursuit is another thing entirely. But I do like that Game Freak actually went like, yeah, well, we don't like this move anymore, and we're taking it out for competitive balance. I think that's good. Same with Return. The inclusion of Return has always been a little bit weird. Return basically was a 102 base power move in the competitive scene that would always be normal type, and with the 8 abilities, so like Refrigerate, Galvanize, that was a really strong move. And taking it out, along with Frustration, kind of balances that out. Normal types no longer get this free stab move that deals insane damage for no reason whatsoever. On the other hand, that does mean that some normal types really lost their relevance, as they no longer get that powerful stab move that actually gave them a lot of power. For example, Galarian Linoone is a Pokemon that simply does not have the massive power that you would want it to in not fully evolved, because it no longer has that Return. It has to rely on Double Edge or Facade. Another good example would be something like, I don't know, running Return or Frustration on a Pokemon so you can play around with Ditto impostering it and having the wrong happiness factor. So these are small details that I think we'll miss in the games. Now that Return and Frustration are gone, but I won't miss them too much. And then of course the big one is Hidden Power. Hidden Power being gone is massive for any special attacker and even some physical attackers, but I think I like it. I have never liked how any special attacker whatsoever can just be like, yo, this is my move pool. I have these moves. Oh, but I also have this move of any type I want, just because I'm a special attacker and I can really capitalize off of it. That might sound a little bit short-sighted, and I agree it is a little bit short-sighted, but I do really like the exclusion of hidden power. And it makes sense. Unknown isn't in the game. Its signature move, hidden power, is not in the game anymore either. It kind of makes sense when you look at it that way. There's also no point for hidden power to be there. So, apart from the competitive scene, hidden power was meant to be gone. You know, it affects the competitive scene quite a lot. But I personally can totally live with that. And then finally we have some details. So these details are really small to me. They are really not relevant to me personally. But here we go. The XP share, first of all, it's always on. I hate it. I don't think that's something that they should do at all. Because I'm an RPG player. I love playing hard RPGs. The Legend of Heroes series, for example, I really love those games because of how difficult you can get. And then Pokemon is just like one of the easiest games in the world. And that's fine. I don't mind Pokemon being easy. But when you go ahead and you tell me, oh, now you can put things in your box whenever you want, you can have the XP share always on, and you don't even get a choice in it, it just annoys me because I'm like, well, why? Why would you actively make the game this much easier than it's supposed to be? People have been complaining about difficulty for so long, and Game Freak just does not care about your opinion on difficulty, clearly. So that kind of makes me sad in that aspect, but I also don't care enough to really argue about it. The second picture, obviously Tyranitar and Pikachu. I just like this picture more than a regular raid battle. But this is supposed to be about raid battles, so let's talk about raid battles. They're good, but they suck. If you don't have human friends, then the AI will not help you in raid battles whatsoever, because the AI is absolute trash. Which is to say, if Game Freak had done a better job on the AI in raid battles, I would have loved them. But I don't, and they didn't, so that's what we have to deal with. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because I don't really care about raid battles too much. They're just a mechanic that's in the game and it's not that relevant to me. But better AI partners really would have helped to like capitalize on the usefulness of the AI, in my personal opinion. Now that is going to be all that I will be talking about for these 10 things that I like or don't like or that I feel strongly about in Pokemon Sword and Shield. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys can see where I'm coming from with some of these. It's fine if you disagree, of course. It's always fine to disagree with a video. That's why we post videos, to make our opinion known, you know? If you disagree with anything, of course, feel free to post in the comments. I will gladly take any Regenerator hate, because I realize a lot of people really hate that ability. I really love it personally, which is why I got its own spot on the list. But other than that, I think most of these are actually pretty unbiased studies of the topic in question. I don't know. You guys can tell me how you feel about it all, and I'll see you guys in another video. Thank you for watching.